So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us during the post-lunch stretch of this day. I know this is the time of the day when we get a bit too comfortable with our chairs, but I'll try to get us moving. So as John mentioned, I'm from Infosys. So we are a global IT services company. We have been there for the last 43, 44 years. Uh, we do around $20 billion of business every year, and we are present in close to 60 countries, and our employee count as of today probably is around 325,000, right? And we have close to 2,000 clients all over the globe, including UK. And we have been a tech partner for OU for more than 8 years, and we do a lot of work in application development, maintenance, testing, and also some proof of concepts in the AI area. And we have done a couple of leadership training sessions for AI leadership in February of this year. So as John mentioned, I spend my time training employees and clients in the AI area. When I say employees, it's not only the software community. I'm also talking about different personas, including HR, marketing, finance, and legal, because our belief is AI is not only for the software community, right? It's for everybody. When people say you need to use ChatGPT, we believe that there is an effective way to use ChatGPT. That's also a skill, right? So we have this skill spectrum where on one end of the spectrum, we call it as a consumers of AI skills, how to consume this AI being offered by various tools. On the other end of the spectrum is for folks who create this AI model. So we train people across the spectrum. In many ways, this job has been equal, challenging, and rewarding. The challenging part comes in explaining the jargon, and rewarding part comes where somebody who has never used any AI tool, and we train them, and they start using the tool and say some time, and basically use that time to do things they like. When I do these AI presentations, I usually find three kinds of groups, subgroups within the crowd. One is excited, those who are excited about AI. Second group who are curious but cautious. And third group, slightly terrified, right? I think probably we'll find the same in this group also. So when I talk about AI today, uh, when I say AI, it's basically systems trained on data and which can spot patterns in that data. That used to be the case till 2020, but then onwards the world of generative AI came in, where now AI systems can create data in textual format, video format, audio format. I'm sure all of you have used it, which can be quite convincing, often helpful, and many times confidently wrong. Right? I'm sure you would have experienced that. So again, so AI is not magic. It's just mathematics with ambition. Right? So why there's been so much buzz in AI in the last 3-4 years? Basically, three tailwinds are converging. One, data. We have seen huge explosion of data, and we are contributing to the data as consumers. Second is compute. The computation infrastructure has become easier to access, faster, and cheaper. Third one is, I'm sure you're hearing about models dropping in every other day, right? So models are easy to scale now, and they're becoming more powerful, more capable, but they do come in with some consequences. So here is how we'll spend the next probably 40 minutes or so. We'll start with opportunities where AI genuinely helps people. Then we'll discuss about challenges and ethics like privacy, accountability, fairness. I think some of these were discussed in earlier sessions. And place RISE beside the opportunities and discuss about that. And as John mentioned, there will be a couple of interactive segments while we go through that. So here is the lens I'll keep coming back to. So I think all of us know AI can make our life easier and make us look very smarter, but it also comes with certain trade-offs, and here are certain things I've listed here. Now, the first one is convenience versus consent. Now, what does it mean? to take a very crude analogy, convenience is about sugar, right? And we all like sugar, but consent is about that label you find on the packet. So we want both. Now let's take a couple of examples. Smartphone photos. I think all of us use smartphone photo app very frequently, and maybe we are aware that our phone groups our pictures based on faces and places. And we can actually prompt our photo app saying that, hey, show me the picture of dad at the beach, and it actually shows up. Convenience says, wow. But consent asks, who sees these tags? Is my data getting uploaded to the cloud? Have I given consent for the app to work this way? What happens if I switch phones? Whether my previous consent is transferred to the new phone. Right? These are very practical questions. Another common example is location preferences. Right? When we use many apps, it asks for our location preferences. These apps could be around maps, weather, ride hailing, right? And they work best with location on, because they give hyper-local forecasts and things like that. And also, some of these apps do ask our consent, right? Share our location once, or while using this app, or always. And sometimes it can get quite confusing. Now, we may be worried that, does the app track our background wherever we go, even if you're not using that app, and use that for showing certain ads? And if you don't want to share consent for our location preference, does the app work in the basic mode? So these are some of the common examples. We can keep going on talking about Amazon or some other e-commerce website where a lot of these things happen. So I'm not saying that any of this is sinister by default. It just means that AI systems needs to be designed for both sugar and the label. So that essentially means that system should have clear settings, easy opt-outs that we can understand, and honest explanation. Now, the next trade-off is around speed and safety. Now, obviously, we all want speed. Speed delights until it doesn't, right? We want everything fast and we want everything right. One good example could be the email apps these days, right? They automatically compose emails for you, and then you just hit send, one tap, and it will go out. Obviously, it will help us clear our inboxes in few seconds. But there should be a safety aspect also we need to consider. For example, say your email has some sensitive words around salary or medical stuff for your passport. Do you really want email app to send out a message in that one tap? Or when these sensitive words are there, do you want two-tap system where it prompts you saying that, hey, do you really want this, send this email out? So again, this is not being anti-speed, it's just that we need to be pro-speed, but with certain safety belts on. Now, the third one is automation in agency. I think earlier speakers alluded to some of this. So automation is very good in tackling the boring bits. And agency is all about human beings having the steering wheel in making certain decisions. So a simple example could be this spam filter, or an equivalent example could be how a bank flags a suspicious transaction activity. Right? So once in a while, you have seen that your email system actually blocks a valid message. And what happens if a bank blocks a valid credit card transaction saying that is suspicious activity and blocks your credit card totally? Right now, so automation helps scale a lot of things, but we need to have agency here in the sense that there should be some undo feature for all of these exceptional criteria. Another good example where AI is actually very useful is in hospital imaging technology, especially identifying malignancies in CT scans and X-rays. They can actually identify small malignancies which radiologists probably can miss. So agency is where we don't allow a system automatically tell a patient that, okay, this is good or bad, right? A radiologist actually is in the loop before saying that, before giving the final diagnosis. So what is the pattern here? We need to use automation as a first pass. Right? I think some of them talked about it earlier, that we should not allow in certain cases AI to make end-to-end decisions. Humans should be responsible for outcomes as much as possible. And if something goes wrong, there should be an appeals process to set things right. The fourth one, I think, which is very important, is scale versus inclusion. Now, scale is like a megaphone, right? Now, it can actually amplify benefits, but unfortunately, it can also amplify or widen the gaps. A good example could be a social mobility platform like a job portal. Now, I know many of us have used job portals to upload our CVs. Typically, what happens in job portals is there are some AI-driven screeners which rank CVs. And usually, the algorithms work in such a way that it ranks CVs based on patterns seen in past hires that it has seen the CVs for. The problem with that approach is it can actually filter out candidates based on certain postcodes, because in the past data, right, some people belong to certain postcodes may not have made it to the final job offer. Or it can filter out those people who have non-linear career paths, those who have taken a break to take care of somebody at home, right? It can actually do that. Now, while scale, using this platform, we can actually reach out to hundreds and thousands of potential employees. But inclusion here means that we need to target beyond these proxies around postcode, or they should rank for skills and not for pedigree. And they should publish clear criteria and give candidates a simple appeal path. Now, another good example is, I think, talking about university here, there are a lot of AI learning apps these days. And most of the learning apps have these so-called nudges, right, where they actually track the speed of our consumption of the content. And if it sees that we are slow, it will actually say that, hey, are you okay? Do you want something else? Now, this works for most people. But for those who are neurodivergent learners, say dyslexia, those signals can misread what's happening. Because for them, slow reading isn't low understanding. Okay, and they actually switch tabs often, right? And these AI models confuse that if you're switching tabs often, you're lacking focus. But for them, that's a strategy to focus on learning, right? So these are the nuances AI models miss these days. So inclusion here essentially means that there should be friendly options for differently abled people. For example, for dyslexia, you should have larger fonts. Between words, you should have larger spaces. And also mark a unit complete when the learning is done, not just because some timer stopped, right? So that's very important. And allow other ways of engagement for a specific segment of people. So idea here is scale is good when it opens the door, but it actually becomes a justice issue when it benefits a set of people who already resemble the training data. I think one of them asked a question earlier, right? Because models are biased by training data. While scaling, this actually can get amplified and does the opposite. It can actually exclude a group of people from using the systems effectively. Now, so that's the lens for the rest of the session. So convenience with consent, speed with safety, automation with agency, and scale with inclusion. Now, let's name the 5 big opportunities most of us feel first. I think productivity and growth is something we all can relate to, because we are using systems like ChatGPT or Claude for drafting, summarizing, and things of that nature. In office work, for example, we use it to record our entire meeting and creates a 6-page status report, but it also is capable of creating an action tracker. These are the tasks. This is to be done by this person by what date. And small businesses can use to create their product catalog. Or if you have a long WhatsApp message, family WhatsApp message, which has gone through 80, 100 messages, you can use it to summarize for, say, 5 lines. So that's number one in terms of opportunity. And second one is safer public services. Now, there are a lot of forecasting AI models. Say, a water utility can predict which pipes are likely to get ruptured next few days and sends the repair people before the flooding happens. And in healthcare operations, there are very good hospital bed management systems which predict what might be the bed usage in ICU or a ward, say next month, based on climate patterns and pathogens and past history, right? And that actually helps in optimizing the staff for next few months. The third one is, third opportunity is around accessibility and inclusion. So basically, I think we all realize one good thing about AI is it's a technology that adapts to people. For example, right now, we can go to a classroom and say we don't understand the language of the teacher teaching us, or we are sitting way behind. We can turn on a smartphone which gives us live captions, right? So that's one thing. Or a student who is hard of hearing can attend a classroom like everybody else, but still can make out using the very simple translation or captioning apps to understand what's happening in a classroom. So the fourth one is creativity and media. I think one of the earlier questions talked about it. AI actually lowers the barrier to create, right? I mean, we don't need to be very creative to be, naturally creative to do a lot of things, and a lot of powerful AI tools which can make us look much smarter and be creative. For example, think about a local theater and it wants to storyboard a teaser video. Probably took 2 to 3 weeks just to do something like that. But now with the help of AI tools, you can probably do it in an afternoon. And you can create your own marketing marketing artifact using AI tools. And I think Esther showed you about the 5 Gen AI archetype, right, earlier. So we actually used AI tool to fine-tune some of the personas and what activities, right? So again, we thought about the broad framework, but then we used AI to basically fine-tune that 5 types of generative AI users. The fourth one, which probably is of bit of concern these days, is around work and jobs. Again, we need to say tasks are basically automated. That also means that work needs to be redesigned. So what does it mean? Say there's a finance team and their job is, say, matching of invoices. Now routine automation can be done by AI, but the team concentrates on exception, right? And also there was a question around is AI contributing to more jobs, right? I think there will be jobs around the so-called green skills, because AI consumes a lot of energy, and there are talks about how to optimize and things like that, and how to audit it. So there are jobs around green skills, green auditing around AI technologies, which will continue to grow. Now, these are all meaningful wins. I think it increases speed, quality, and access. But again, each of these benefits comes with a paired tension. Right? Again, the aim isn't to slow progress, but it's to shape it responsibly. Right? So let's take a few examples. We'll just compare the tensions with the opportunities we just talked about. So productivity and growth. We saw that it can make things fast, but what is fast and confident can also be wrong. Right? Couple of examples. AI is usually used in drafting contract documents in legal offices. But in contracts, as you are aware, a single word can miss the nuance. For example, there may be a word called phrase called may cancel versus must cancel. Because all said and done, AI doesn't understand language, right? Human beings understand the nuance. It just goes by, I think Dave was talking about how these AI models are trained. It just trained on internet text, so they don't understand context and nuance like that. But then if they get this thing wrong, it doesn't do great for the lawyer using the AI to draft that. And in coding examples also we have seen, while AI can do a lot of, they can help us code faster, creating feature after feature, but at times it can introduce code which is not very secure. So here we need to ask few questions, like when we create AI systems for these features, how is the testing done? How do we do verification? When do we sample and when do we spot check? And if something goes wrong, what's the rollback plan? Now we talked about safer public services, but here we need to be worried about false positives and due process. Right now, one example could be, say, benefits processing. Now, if an AI system can actually deny benefits for two families if they are sharing the same address, which may be a very genuine case, but AI thinks there is a fraudulent activity, and that can be a big issue. Or your automated number plating recognition can issue a ticket even though you are nowhere near the road. Now, here the questions that need to be asked are, when AI takes certain decisions, what was the evidence, who reviews it, in what time frame, and if something goes wrong, what's the appeal path? Now, accessibility and inclusion, we talked about the good examples around it, but there can be a surveillance creep there. For example, now workplaces have a lot of cameras around us, right? You can see that here also. Now, cameras for safety can actually start estimating whether your employees are being attentive in the workplace. Right? That's not something that none of us would want to have. So, the questions to ask here is, what is exactly off limit? What do we don't want the AI to do? And where's the consent boundary for these kind of applications? Now, creativity and media, again, it can create things faster, but the problem is we sometimes don't understand what's real. Right? For example, right now in civic life, you can actually create voice clone messages of a politician and try to incite people. Right? Politician may not even said that, but just using 20-25 words of his or her spoken words earlier, right? We can create any message we want, which exactly appears like that person speaking. Now, the question to ask here is, do we label that this particular voice or video or audio or anything has been, how do we label it? And is there a way to check origin when it matters? Because in this particular case, it does matter. And in work and jobs, obviously the question is about task displacement and skill gaps. Now, all of us know that some tasks will shrink and people need bridges to whatever happens in the future, right? For example, in meetings right now, previously we used to have people to take notes of meetings. Now that is no more needed, right? So that also means that the person who did that earlier probably needs to be transitioned into a research or a quality check of what was generated. So the question to ask here is, do we need to have a funded transition plan and visible reskilling, right? So the gain should not be just about productivity. When you talk about gains via AI, it should be about mobility also, right? What happens when this happens, when when the tasks are reduced? Now, again, idea here is we need to design for both sides, so that AI stops being a wedge and becomes a lift. Now, I want to hear some of your, I'll just do a poll here, but before that, let me explain what I mean by this. Where's the line between AI assistance and human accountability, right? So there are three options. I'll just explain what I mean, then I'll probably do a show of hands and hear your perspectives also. The first option is AI recommends and humans decide. Second option, AI decides low stakes, humans decide high stakes. The third option is AI decides widely if monitored. Now let's anchor what we mean by assistance and accountability. Okay, the first option essentially means that it's a co-pilot model, in the sense that human beings and AI are working together. In the email example we discussed earlier, here the AI is drafting the email, but it's not sending the email, right? That resides on us. Or if you go to an e-commerce website, I'm sure you would have seen this, right? It says that people who purchase this also purchase some other product. It just shows you the options. It doesn't go and order it for you. So here, AI is actually recommending and humans are deciding. So it's basically a co-pilot model where both of us work together. The second option we are talking about, AI decides low stakes and humans decide high stakes. Now the first option A was mostly about co-pilot. Here we are talking about tiered automation. So what do I mean by tiered automation? For example, let's say that you expense a bill in your office for your business travel. Now, maybe there should be some rules based on some past learning that all bills less than 50 pounds is automatically approved. Anything above that, send it to the manager. Obviously, who decides this 50 pounds is something that needs to be decided. So here, rule of thumb for low stakes is something which is reversible, which is low harm and easy to appeal. And what is high stakes? Option 3 is AI decides widely monitored. So AI decides everything. So this option 2 was tiered automation. We had some parts of automation, some humans getting involved. Third part is AI decides widely if monitored. So this is scaled automation, obviously with some guardrails. For example, say in logistics and warehousing, the system can allocate tasks and routes in real time. And there will be some supervisors with dashboards who can override it, but most of the work will be done by the system. Now here the key requirement obviously should be strong monitoring, there should be audit trails, and some sort of escalation when things drift. Now, again, in each of your world, I think, for example, you are running a business, or you are a teacher, or you are a lawyer, or you work in the finance function, the AI use cases probably are different. Now, if you choose A as a option for this question, right, then you have to decide what is high stakes in your world. If you choose B, you need to decide who sets the threshold. We talked about the invoice approval or the expense approval example, right? Who decides the threshold and how often should you revisit them? It's no more a technology problem, it's left to you. What evidence would prove the monitoring is working if you choose C? So these are the questions you need to answer. So again, I would like to know your perspectives. How many would go for A here? Obviously, it depends on your particular area or your whatever you are working on. If you choose to implement AI or any perspectives around here, yeah, please. I'll summarize it later, but there are 3 questions basically like this, then we'll summarize. So I'll just listen in and then we'll probably. You go with A and B, okay. So you don't want AI to do full end-to-end automation ever. Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm just listening in here. Yes, sir.
Between B and C, because to me, it seems that with C, I'm telling AI to decide, but I expect a human to monitor. I think it's the same thing with
okay.
B. I don't know if there's a difference.
Yeah. So the B is, you are putting some threshold, some rules, right? C is wholesale automation, whereas B is tiered automation where you put some threshold, right? So C is where you expect AI to do most of the things on its own. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to think of exact context here. When I'm vibe coding, it starts off as A, and it keeps asking you things. But I found that my tendency is to pretty much go right to C. There are a handful of things I know I don't want it to do, and I say no to that.
Okay.
And everything else is to on Claude Code. Yeah, just do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And usually the thing that I reserve to myself is to run the final test on my data that I will look at with my eyeballs to judge whether it's right. That's the one thing I won't let it do. But everything else, write the documentation, check it into GitHub, yeah. But when it comes down to, oh, do you want me to run the test? It's like,
okay,
you can run it, but I'm going to run it again.
Okay.
So that's the one thing I reserve, which I think that's a C, right? Yeah.
I think in a coding example, it's probably easier to answer this question, right? Okay. Any more views? Oh, mix and match, context specifics. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, please go ahead. I think.
All of the above, because if you've got the autopilot on a commercial jumbo jet, I certainly don't want C for me. But occasionally I do want it because it's going to be better than the pilot in certain circumstances where certain of the pilot's human characteristics like sight are not available because of fog, for example.
Okay.
So I would say it depends entirely on your level of knowledge,
Correct.
the context,
Okay.
and the circumstances. So, yeah, I think on the whole, I would always start with A,
Okay.
but where I end up,
It's context specific. Right? Yeah.
It's quite funny actually because it's funny how as humans we're now going straight talking about AI, but if you like backtrack and you were talking about automation, from a corporate level, you wouldn't use an automated algorithm if it wasn't at 99% accuracy, right? Anything lower than that, you'd be like, it's redundant. So I would choose A because if AI is still hallucinating, it's too dangerous for B and C, right? So it just kind of shows the gaps of maybe where best practices as us together collectively should be kind of seeing where this is, unless you can prove to me that it won't hallucinate.
But what about decisions which are not really high stakes, low stakes where 99% is still okay? Because you're automating 99% of the task.
Yeah, then like you said, then if it is 99% and we take that same standard as automation, then yeah, maybe you could then move into B and then say, yeah, that makes sense because the accuracy is 99%, so that 1% slip, I'm assuming a human would be there to pick it up because you're kind of then letting humans decide the high stakes. So that kind of then makes C redundant.
But we wouldn't choose A in a medical diagnosis setup, right? Definitely. Because even if it's 1%, 1% is a big number
100%.
for us trusting a medical vision system to decide on X-ray or CT scan, right? That, I mean, who decides that? That 1% is good in an office automation, which costs you probably $20, so 20 pounds if something goes wrong, versus in a diagnosis experiment, that 1% can mean different things.
Definitely, yeah. You just probably proven why doctors are still should be here for a long time as well. Yeah. But yeah, I for safety for me, I would still stick with A.
Okay. Sorry.
Does it come back to how we would have traditionally trained another human? So taking an apprentice or somebody new to a job, we would have gone through the 3 stages. So they would have done a task, shown us that they'd done it, we would sign it off, which is A. B, they take more responsibility, they can do more of a task until we get to C, where we leave them to themselves because they're trained. But the only difference there becomes the AI, whether it's a ring-fenced within your own data set, or whether it's taking, and sorry for those in the room, I don't know the correct term, where it's taking data from outside of your sphere where you can't guarantee that it's correct. So if it's a ring-fenced data set and you've trained it correctly, it can go ahead with monitoring.
Nice way of putting it, yeah. I think.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with all the various points, and part of what worries me is who decides what's low stakes and high stakes. At what point does the AI have the thing to say this is actually now a high stakes thing? Go back to the medical thing. I was thinking of data breaches. 1% of your data being breached is a 60 million fine from the ICO. Even if it can automate 99% of it, 99.9% of it, you'd still, and so it does, for me, all depend, and I use AI for lots of different things, and it does, and I hate the word hallucinate, if we're going to talk about AI as working with us, it's lying to us. I think that the term, it's lying, it's making stuff up. If you remember your team was making stuff up for you, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm sorry you're hallucinating today. We wouldn't, So I think there's a danger in terminology as well that needs thinking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I've got, well, comment number one in the sense of A, under recommends and humans decide. Certainly, yes, within health already, we've got AI analysing screening slides to identify erroneous cells, to identify then diagnosis of cancers, for example, and then the humans getting involved. And when the humans haven't got involved, we've had the headline stories where the wrong information's gone out. So there is that bit of needing to get that high stakes earlier.
Yes.
The other one for me under C is the AI decides. If anyone's had the misfortune of having to use an automated external defibrillator, that tells you when to push the button. It tells you whether the person's got a pulse. You're there just to do the pushy bit because the ones that actually do the pushing are really expensive, but they can do it. So we have got examples where the AI is in control of whether or not a person is resuscitated in those extreme expensive cases. But for most of the time, there's a human there. But we have very little decision because the technology is telling us. What we hope is in all of those early stages of development is that we've had the human involvement with the data to then get to that point that says, actually, now we feel safe to trust that piece of kit to make those decisions about when to push the button.
Thank you. So we'll probably move. There are two more questions, then we'll come back and discuss, right? So I just took your. Okay, let me move on. Okay. So in high impact decisions, would you prefer a slightly less accurate but explainable system or a more accurate black box? I think I'll explain what it means. I think some of it was discussed earlier. So when we say high impact, what I mean by high impact here is any decisions that affects rights, money, safety, or health. Now, what does explainable mean here? So you need a reason. For example, say your loan was rejected based on an AI system. Or in a hospital, right? There are triage systems which can be designed using AI, which can support clinical judgment. Or in a hiring system, do you want a transparent rubric that you can audit for bias? Now, why would you pick A? Because there's a concept of contestability here that people can understand and actually appeal the decision if they want to. So this is about explainability. Now B, it's a black box. What do you mean by black box? We will accept opacity of an AI system if the gain is real and validated. We are saying that it's a validated gain, but we won't be able to explain. For example, there are in fraud detection, there are some rare patterns, non-linear patterns, where fraud systems actually do a very good job. And tests have shown that they do really well, but we are not able to explain why they work. And this is a problem with the AI model. I think Professor Miriam also talked about transparency versus explainability in the morning. And this is a ongoing problem within the AI world. Say in ICU prediction, you have a very complex non-linear model which does very good in saying that, okay, this patient has to be moved to ICU, this patient has to be released. It works better than human judgment, but it's not able to, we are not able to give an answer why it's working. So in this case, what would you choose? And obviously it depends. I think easy answer for everything is depends. So, and what do I mean here? If the decision by AI are affecting the rights of people in terms of, say, housing or credit or employment, probably we'll lean towards explainable. I think that's something as human beings will probably do. When we might lead to a black box kind of a situation where if the harm is lower, and the errors are quickly reversible, we might allow for black box with strong guardrails. Now, again, I think if I ask you to show your hands, I think all of you probably will go to depends or probably explainable. Now, I want to hear your perspectives around these three options, just like last time. Is it okay to go with a black box system when things like ICU usage or something like that is getting decided, where human lives are at stake, but we won't be able to explain the model itself? Okay. Even if it's about life and death situations. No, I'm saying that machines will, again the question is, if I say that in a medical scenario,
Yes.
if AI will make mistakes 2 per 1,000 decisions and humans make mistakes for 2 per 100. But in the AI scenario, I won't be able to explain why it is making that decision. Will we still choose AI versus humans?
Then I think we say it depends on the circumstances and the case to case.
Correct. Because here it's a very little tricky because there's still 2 human beings getting
Yes,
affected.
you are right, yes. So I think then we go with C, depends.
Okay. And this is, by the way, this is a real problem, right? That's why, I mean, in radio diagnosis, many AI systems do far better than an average radiologist, but no hospital will ever implement it because something goes wrong, right? If you tell the caretaker that an AI decided, artificial intelligence decided the outcome, people will be not so happy about it, even though we know AI is probably better than an average radiologist. Again, it's not about technology, it's about our own, how we feel about things, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. One of you, yeah.
So for me, one of the things it depends on, and gets back to this notion I was talking about before, is testing. So is it, if I do it, you die or live? Or is it, gee, it's suggesting chiropractic? How could that? Well, it's not going to hurt. Oh my God, there was something I did not explain why chiropractic solved the whole thing, but it's not going to hurt. And I'm thinking of I was doing a device had failed, and I had GPT helping me out with it. It did do this, do this, do this, do this, and it was offering explanations that I didn't understand. And I just tried it. Well, I don't quite know what this is doing, but it's not going to hurt. I don't quite know what this is doing, but and a quite expensive piece of machinery that I was quite certain I was going to shell out a lot of money to replace. It says, actually, your driver is just corrupted. How did that happen? Nonsense explanation. Reload the driver. How do I do that? It's not going to hurt. And then I reload the driver, and wow, you just saved me $1,500. Thank you. And because and the explanations meant nothing to me. It was giving them, but I didn't understand most of them. Okay. But what I could do is I understood enough to say, this isn't going to fry the machine. I can try this. And so is it a black and white thing, which is kind of what you've been painting with your medical things, but even medical isn't black and white. Let's give it a try. And guess what? A lot of real docs do that in the real world too. So this isn't even an AI thing.
Sure. So one last answer, then we'll move to the next question. Yeah.
A, because in B, it might be clearly better on a set of benchmarks, but unless you're able to understand why it's good, then you don't know how generalizable those results are. And you don't know what the actual reason for that reliability is. I could pad that out with an example, but maybe you want to save for time.
Okay. So one last one, then we'll go to the next question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Summer, and I work at Cranfield University. While I'm actually inclined to say depends, I'm just looking at the question, and I can see that it says high impact decision. And because of the word high impact, even if it's a low chance that things can go wrong, I would actually go for A, explainable. Just because, obviously, it's a high impact decisions, and just because things can go wrong, whether it's actually a very small margin error, I would still like it to be explainable so I can go back and check the root cause of things and maybe learn from what goes wrong and things like that.
Sure, sure. Thank you. I'll move on to the next one, then we'll revisit this. Now, the next question is, should platforms be legally required to label AI-generated content? We actually see a lot of platforms coming out with content, but we sometimes don't know they are AI-generated or not. So, the first one is, yes, always. For example, if your e-commerce website shows some AI-generated image, we should always say it's synthetic. So sometimes ads use some creative tools to do something which may not be based on reality. So what might be the reason here, rationale here? People deserve to know what's synthetic always, irrespective of whatever the use case. Now what is B? So labels can be bypassed, bad actors won't comply. So why bother? Let it be no always. So how to get away around it? Probably encourage literacy and tools, but don't try to legislate every single post on social media. Again, that's one view. Third one is only where it matters from a public interest perspective. For example, in elections, political ads. We don't want it to be AI generated. Or in public safety and healthy, we don't want emergency alerts to be coming out of an AI system. So, any thoughts, perspectives around this? Yes.
I would question kind of what AI-generated content to be labeling. So if you were using AI-generated content, for example, like a thesaurus, so you're struggling with a phrase.
Correct.
And it's almost like a drop-down spell check, then you'd be thinking, well, actually, why would you label that? Because it's kind of confusing, because people might think that actually the images or the content itself is AI generated. So it's almost like where that line is.
Yeah, it's a good question. So probably the question is more towards, say, an ad, a product ad being generated out of AI, or a politician's message being generated out of AI. Would you be okay with that? Not for these basic use cases you just mentioned. So that's why I gave you some examples.
I think there is already some legislation in the EU, isn't there?
EU, yes.
About this,
yes,
yeah.
There is.
And I think they are quite keen on marking the metadata. So even if it's not visible on the image itself, you can tell at some level that something is AI created. That's the idea anyway behind the legislation. But even then, as you were saying, there's a gray area between something that's been proofread by AI or just very marginally changed, or an image that's been marginally changed. Do you really need to mark that? I think the legislation's a bit looser on that.
You are right. EU AI Act is very specific on, they actually define certain areas where what can be done, what cannot be done, whether one should label it synthetically created. And they're very punitive also if you violate that.
Yeah, I think that's sensible to mark it in the metadata at the very least. But I'm more inclined to A, because I think there's also personal interest involved. And if there are images that look very much like a real person, like a deep fake or something, that, and it's not necessarily a public interest thing, but a personal protection thing, then you probably would also want that marked very clearly as AI created to protect, a personal situation.
Any more comments?
I think it might be a bit late in the sense that there's so much, AI is already cannibalizing itself, and there's content out there that we don't know is AI generated. And so do we need to go back and redo the whole internet, which isn't going to happen? And also, what do we mean by platforms? People that are consuming stuff on Facebook, there's loads of people are home generating AI content. And if we're going back to the sustainability thing, we'll need to build a whole nother AI to monitor the AI, to tell us what's AI generated, and then who's monitoring the monitoring. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I just don't think it's necessarily practical. So it's almost too late.
Sure. I'll quickly move on. I think we just have 7-8 minutes left. We'll come back a little bit later. Now, I'll just, okay, so we'll just go back. I think this is something I kind of put what might be the reaction from audience. I think more or less some of it is aligned. Now, so assistance versus accountability. Basically, we talked about AI recommending, but we decide, then we co-decide, or AI acts on its own. Now, so that's the decision tier. Now, logbooks is where we need to record which model, which version of the AI tool is making these decisions, the prompt or inputs, the output, and if a person overrode it. Why do we need to do that? So we can explain the decisions later, and more importantly, we can improve them. And we also need to have an appeals process, right? So it just doesn't, if the system is explainable, it doesn't mean that we should not have a process built around it to help people, to help respond to people who ask for explanation. I think that's something not a lot of model providers are focusing on. They just say that it's an explainable system, but they're not building the plumbing around it to help people who can ask questions so that they get the response back. So in high impact decisions, again, we need to look at, I think, what decisions are rights affecting. Again, when you talk about rights affecting, we are talking about housing, credit, and things like that. So there should be contestability and transparency first approach there. Anywhere else, probably utility can win. Right? So that's one way of looking at it. Again, one key mistake we make while measuring the accuracy of AI systems is something called uneven error distribution. Let's say that a voice assistant claims that it is 94% accurate on an average. This is what usually the assistants talk about. But basically there is an uneven error distribution because for certain accents, even though the person may be speaking in the same language, it's only 80% accurate, right? So it can be misleading to that extent. So when you look at the accuracy claims of models, we also need to look at the error distribution. And the third one is, should platforms be legally required to label AI-generated content? Now, we need to look at provenance over policing. So we need to, what is provenance, right? It's like a digital receipt, or you can call it a watermark, like the stamp of birth of an image, video, or audio clip, right? So that we know at the end of the day, if we mandate provenance for all AI-generated content, we know who created it and when it was created. So because trying to spot fakes after the fact, I think somebody talked about deep fakes, right? Is like more or less like guessing if a banknote is real without a watermark, right? It doesn't help us at all. So, okay. Now I think there are a couple of slides more, but some of it was covered earlier. So responsibly, I think many of them talked about it. So different geographies are taking care of responsibility in different ways. EU, I think she talked about EU AI Act, which is probably the most comprehensive AI regulations anywhere in the world. So there are many clauses around prohibited users, high risk users, limited risk users, and things like that. In UK, it is more or less a regulator-led and a evaluation-first model, right? And in US, there's no federal level law at all. Each of the states is doing its own, but they claim it's more innovation-led and less of regulator-led, right? In other countries, probably fast-growing economies, it is innovation first with targeted safeguards. Now, again, I just put a good practice checklist around when we create AI systems, what we need to define purpose and scope, data rights and minimization. I think one question came around that early today, right? Use only the data you need, risk assessment before deployment, human in the loop for high stakes. I think this will be uploaded in the website later, so the entire deck will be there. Live monitoring with rollback and kill switch, right? Something goes wrong, we need to have a kill switch. And vendor diligence, right? We need to ask suppliers of AI models for evaluation reports, logging, and things like that. User education is of utmost importance. So today what we did was we treated AI as a booster and a stress test and used 4 tensions as a lens. Then we paired opportunities with design questions they create. I think we also heard some of you talk about accountability, explainability, black box, and labeling. So going ahead, I think there are 2 anchors for the road. I think we need to have a 2-pocket approach. One is AI can help, but the other side we need to say, show you're working. If you are working, I need to know why you are working. And we need to have both the pockets when you think about AI. And we need to be curious, that is, we need to try these new tools. We need to measure and improve. And ultimately, it needs to protect people. Otherwise, there's no point in having AI, right? It needs to count externalities. So with this, we'll end, I think, 60 minutes over, Professor John. I think we'll end here. Thank you. Thank you.